Girl finds an abandoned baby near a dumpster and decides to investigate. When she discovers who left him there, she is horrified. The evening air in Willow Creek was crisp, and the streets were beginning to empty as residents retreated to the warmth of their homes. Clara Adams, a bright-eyed 19-year-old with a notebook clutched in her hands, strolled along the neighborhood's narrow paths, lost in thought. She had a habit of taking long walks after her shifts at the local diner, using the time to dream about the life she wanted, one far away from the sleepy town where little ever happened. Tonight, however, was different. As she passed by the alley near the old grocery store, a faint, heart-wrenching cry pierced the silence. Clara stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding. She glanced around, but the alley seemed empty. The cry came again, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't an animal, it was a baby. Clara stepped cautiously into the dimly lit alley, her footsteps echoing against the brick walls. She followed the sound until her gaze fell upon a bundle wrapped in a tattered blanket, tucked beside a trash bin. Inside, a tiny baby squirmed, its small fists waving weakly in the chilly air. "Oh my God," Clara whispered, dropping to her knees. The sight froze her. How could anyone leave a baby here? The infant couldn't have been more than a few days old. Its cheeks pale but its cries determined. Clara's instincts kicked in. She gently picked up the baby, cradling it against her chest. The child quieted almost immediately, as if sensing her warmth. Her thoughts raced. Should she call the police? Take the baby to the hospital? But before she could decide, she noticed a folded piece of paper tucked under the blanket. Hands trembling, she unfolded the note. "To whoever finds this baby, please take care of them. I have no choice. They deserve a better life." The simple words hit Clara like a punch to the gut. Who could have written this? Why leave the baby here of all places? Questions buzzed in her mind, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't leave the child alone, not even for a moment. Clara hurried home, clutching the baby tightly. Her small apartment above the town's bookstore was modest but warm. Once inside, she carefully placed the baby on her couch and began rummaging for supplies. An old towel, a clean shirt, and a half-empty bottle of water were all she had to work with. She improvised, gently cleaning the baby and swaddling it as best as she could. As the baby drifted into an uneasy sleep, Clara sat beside it, staring at the note. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeply personal about this situation. The handwriting on the note seemed oddly familiar, though she couldn't place it. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was her best friend, Lisa. "Clara, are you okay? You weren't at the diner when I stopped by." Lisa, I found a baby," Clara blurted out, her voice shaking. "In an alley. Someone just left them there." There was a pause. "Wait, what? A baby? What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I think I need to find out who did this. But first, I need to make sure the baby is okay." Lisa's voice softened. "Do you need me to come over? You shouldn't deal with this alone." "No, I'm okay. For now, at least. But thank you." Clara ended the call, her resolve hardening. She had to help this baby, and that meant figuring out the truth. The next morning, Clara went to the local hospital with the baby, explaining what had happened. The nurses assured her the child was in good health, though a bit undernourished. They promised to notify the authorities, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random act of desperation. Something about the note lingered in her mind. As she left the hospital, cradling the now sleeping baby, she noticed a familiar face near the parking lot. Mr. Jennings, a reclusive man who worked at the town archives. He was holding a folder and seemed startled to see her. His gaze flickered briefly to the baby in her arms, and for a moment, an inexplicable sadness clouded his face. "Mr. Jennings?" Clara called out, but the man quickly turned and walked away, leaving her more curious than ever. Back home, Clara replayed the events in her mind. The note, Mr. Jennings' reaction, the faint sense of familiarity that clung to it all. Something told her the answer to this mystery was closer than she realized, and she was determined to uncover it. As the baby stirred in her arms, Clara whispered softly, Don't worry, little one. I'll find out what happened. Promise. The morning sun streamed through Clara's small apartment window as the baby stirred in its makeshift crib, a laundry basket lined with pillows. Clara had barely slept, her mind churning with questions. The note's familiar handwriting still haunted her. Whoever wrote it wasn't a stranger. She was sure of it. The baby let out a soft coo, drawing Clara from her thoughts. "Good morning, little one," she whispered, picking the child up carefully. Her heart ached as she looked into its wide, curious eyes. "We'll figure this out." After feeding the baby a bottle of formula she'd picked up at the store, Clara grabbed her coat and stuffed the note into her pocket. Her first stop would be the town archives, where Mr. Jennings worked. He had seemed odd the day before, too quick to leave when he saw the baby. If anyone had answers, it might be him. The archives building sat at the edge of Willow Creek, a red brick structure weathered by time. Clara pushed open the creaking door and stepped into the dimly lit interior. Rows of books and dusty files stretched endlessly before her. Behind the desk, Mr. Jennings looked up, visibly startled to see her. "Miss Adams," he said, adjusting his glasses. "This is unexpected." Clara didn't waste time. She pulled the note from her pocket and placed it on the counter. "I found this with the baby. The handwriting, it feels familiar. And yesterday you seemed surprised to see me with the child. Do you know anything about this?" Mr. Jennings' face paled. His hands trembled as he picked up the note, his eyes scanning the words. For a moment, Clara thought he might deny everything. But then he sighed deeply, setting the paper down. "I don't know much," he began, his voice heavy. "But I've seen this handwriting before." Clara's breath caught. "Whose is it?" Jennings hesitated, his gaze darting around the room. "It belonged to your father, Clara." The words hit her like a brick. "My father? No, that's not possible. He's been gone for years." Jennings nodded solemnly. "I know, but he used to come to the archives often, researching genealogy and old family records. I recognized his handwriting immediately." Clara's mind reeled. Her father, Michael Adams, had abandoned their family when she was 10. He had disappeared without explanation, leaving her mother to pick up the pieces. She had spent years wondering why he left, but this connection was too much to process. "Why would my father—" "No, this doesn't make sense," Clara said, her voice breaking. "Are you sure?" Jennings nodded again, his eyes kind but sad. "I wish I weren't. But that note, it's his." Clara gripped the counter, her thoughts spinning. Could her father still be in Willow Creek? And if so, why had he left the baby? "Do you know where he is now?" she asked. "I'm sorry, Clara. I haven't seen him in years," Jennings replied. "But he left behind some documents here. Old letters and notes. Maybe they'll help." Jennings led her to a back room filled with boxes. He handed her a faded folder labeled Adams Family. Inside were letters, photographs, and handwritten notes. Clara flipped through them, her pulse racing. One letter stood out. Dated 5 years ago, it was addressed to a woman named Emily Hart. Clara read the words aloud in a whisper. "Emily, I don't know how to make this right. I've made so many mistakes, but leaving wasn't one of them. I had to, for everyone's sake. You and the child, you're my only hope for redemption." Michael Clara's hands shook as she lowered the letter. Emily Hart. Who was she? The note mentioned a child. Was it the baby she found? "Who is Emily Hart?" she asked Jennings. He shook his head. "I don't know. She's not from Willow Creek as far as I can tell. But if Michael wrote to her, she might be the key to all of this." Clara left the archives with more questions than answers. Back at her apartment, the baby was napping peacefully. Clara stared at the child, her heart heavy. "Who are you, little one?" she murmured. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was Lisa. "Clara, you're not going to believe this," Lisa said breathlessly. "I asked around about the baby, and one of my regulars at the diner said, there's a woman named Emily Hart who's been staying at the Willow Creek Motel for the past few weeks." Clara's heart skipped a beat. "Are you sure?" "Positive." "Clara, who is she?" "I think she's connected to the baby," Clara said, grabbing her keys. I have to find her. The Willow Creek Motel was a rundown building on the edge of town, its neon sign flickering faintly in the evening light. Clara approached the front desk, her nerves on edge. I'm looking for Emily Hart, she told the clerk, a bored-looking teenager chewing gum. The clerk raised an eyebrow. Room 12, end of the hall. Clara hesitated before knocking on the door. Her mind raced with possibilities. When the door finally creaked open, a tired-looking woman with red-rimmed eyes stared back at her. Are you Emily Hart? Clara asked. The woman's expression faltered, her gaze dropping to the floor. Who's asking? Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling. I think I found your baby. Emily's eyes widened in shock, tears spilling over as she stumbled back. You found him? Clara nodded, holding out the note. This was with him. It was written by Michael Adams. My father, Emily gasped, clutching the doorframe for support. Michael was your father? Yes, Clara said. And I need to know what's going on. Emily stepped aside, motioning Clara to come in. Then you deserve to know the truth. Emily Hart's room was sparsely furnished, with a faint smell of stale coffee and desperation lingering in the air. The curtains were drawn tightly, letting in only thin slivers of the fading sunlight. Clara stepped inside, her heart pounding. The woman before her, so fragile and grief-stricken, didn't seem like someone who could abandon a baby. But then again, nothing about this situation made sense. Emily sat down on the edge of the bed, wringing her hands. I never wanted to leave him, she began, her voice cracking. But I had no other choice. Clara stood silently, clutching the note. You need to explain. Start from the beginning. Emily nodded, wiping her tears. It started with Michael, she said. We met 6 years ago. He wasn't the man people thought he was. He carried so much guilt, so much pain. He told me about the family he left behind. About you. Clara felt her stomach twist. He told you about me? Yes, Emily said softly. He loved you, Clara. He always regretted leaving, but he said he had to. He said it was to protect you. Protect me? Clara said bitterly. By disappearing without a word? Emily flinched at the anger in Clara's voice. It wasn't just about you. Michael was involved in something complicated. He didn't give me all the details, but it sounded dangerous. He told me he couldn't risk bringing that danger to you and your mother. Clara clenched her fists. She wanted to scream, to demand why her father's idea of protecting his family had been to abandon them. But she forced herself to stay calm. And what about you? How do you fit into this? Emily hesitated, her eyes darting to the folded crib in the corner of the room. We had a child. Your brother. The words hit Clara like a thunderclap. She stared at Emily, the weight of her revelation making it hard to breathe. My brother. Yes, Emily whispered. Michael and we were trying to rebuild his life, away from everything he left behind. But then he got sick. Cancer. Her voice broke. He fought as long as he could, but he passed away a few months ago. And when he did, everything fell apart. Clara felt a mixture of anger and sorrow swelling inside her. The father she had spent years resenting had been out there, living another life, building another family, and now he was gone. She swallowed hard, focusing on the here and now. And the baby? Why leave him in an alley? Emily's face crumpled, fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. I lost everything after Michael died. The house, the money, everything. I couldn't give him the life he deserved. I thought, maybe someone kind would find him and give him a better chance than I ever could. Clara's anger began to soften as she watched Emily break down. The woman before her wasn't heartless. She was desperate. Clara sat beside her, her voice gentler now. Why Willow Creek? Why not leave him at a hospital or with social services? Emily reached into a bag at her feet, pulling out a worn photograph. She handed it to Clara. It was a picture of Michael holding a much younger Clara on his shoulders. They were both smiling, their faces radiant with joy. Michael always said Willow Creek was the only place he ever felt truly at home, Emily said. He thought, maybe someone here would recognize him. Maybe they'd understand. Clara stared at the photo, her chest tightening. She could barely remember the day it was taken, but the image stirred something deep within her. A faint echo of happiness that now felt so far away. "And me?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. "Was it him who chose to leave the baby near my neighborhood?" Emily shook her head. "No, that was my decision. I didn't know where else to go. But when I saw you walking that night, I knew you were his daughter. I hoped you'd do what I couldn't." Clara's mind reeled. She had been angry, confused, and hurt for so long. But now she felt something else creeping in. A strange sense of purpose. The baby wasn't just a helpless child abandoned by a stranger. He was her brother, a piece of the father she had lost. "Emily," Clara said after a long pause, "you're not alone anymore. If Michael wanted to protect us, then we'll protect him. Together." Emily looked up, her tear-streaked face filled with a glimmer of hope. "You mean it?" Clara nodded. "But we need to do this right. We'll figure out a way to take care of him. Both of us." The room fell into a heavy silence, both women processing the fragile alliance they had just formed. Clara cradled the photo in her hands, the weight of its history grounding her. "We'll call him Ethan," Emily said suddenly, her voice firm. "Michael always loved that name." Clara smiled faintly, looking at the baby she had found just hours ago. "Ethan," she echoed. "It's perfect." As the night deepened, the women began to plan. Small steps toward building a future for Ethan. Clara didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but for the first time, she felt ready to face them. Not just for herself, but for the tiny life that had brought them together. The days following Clara's meeting with Emily were a whirlwind of emotions and activity. Ethan, now officially named, slept peacefully in his makeshift crib, unaware of the storm of revelations swirling around him. Clara spent her nights replaying Emily's words, trying to reconcile the father she barely remembered with the man Emily described. One thing was certain: she couldn't leave Emily to struggle alone. But if they were going to give Ethan a chance, they needed stability. That meant answers and a plan. Clara sat at the kitchen table, the morning sun casting a warm glow over her cluttered apartment. A stack of letters from her father's old files lay in front of her. Each one hinted at the man he had become in the years after he left. Most were addressed to Emily, but a few were for someone named Thomas Grayson. "Who's Thomas Grayson?" Clara muttered, flipping through the pages. The name appeared in several letters, always mentioned in hushed tones. "Grayson's offer still stands. I just don't know if I can accept. Grayson says he can fix things, but I don't trust him." Clara's curiosity deepened. If Grayson had been involved in her father's life, perhaps he knew something about the circumstances that forced him to leave. Emily appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. She had been staying with Clara for the past few nights, helping care for Ethan. Despite the tension between them, a quiet understanding had formed. "Morning," Emily said, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "You're up early." "I couldn't sleep," Clara admitted. She slid the letters across the table. "Do you know anything about Thomas Grayson?" Emily frowned, picking up one of the letters. "Grayson, Michael mentioned him a few times. He was some kind of lawyer or business associate. I think Michael trusted him at first, but something changed. Do you know where I can find him?" Emily shook her head. "No, but if he's still in Willow Creek, someone must know." Clara nodded, determination hardening her resolve. "Then I'll find him." The town square was bustling as Clara walked through, her mind racing with questions. Willow Creek wasn't a large town. Everyone knew everyone, or so it seemed. If Grayson was still around, she'd find him. Her first stop was the general store, where Mrs. McAllister, the town's unofficial gossip, stood behind the counter. "Well, if it isn't Clara Adams," the older woman said with a knowing smile. "You've been the talk of the town lately. Heard you found a baby?" Clara resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Willow Creek's rumor mill never missed a beat. "That's true, Mrs. McAllister. But I'm looking for someone. Thomas Grayson. Have you heard of him?" Mrs. McAllister's brow furrowed. "Grayson? That name sounds familiar." "Oh yes, he used to own that old house on Maple Street." Haven't seen him in years, though. Rumor has it he moved away after some legal trouble. What kind of legal trouble? Clara pressed. The woman shrugged. No idea. You'd have to ask someone who knew him better. Try the library archives. If he was important enough to be talked about, there might be something there. The Willow Creek Library was quiet, its musty scent evoking memories of Clara's childhood. She approached the librarian, a kind woman named Mrs. Harper, who greeted her warmly. Clara, it's been ages. What brings you here? I need to look up someone. Thomas Grayson. He might be connected to my father. Mrs. Harper's eyes lit with interest. Grayson. Yes, I remember him. He was a lawyer who came to town about 10 years ago. Seemed respectable at first, but there were whispers about shady dealings. She led Clara to the archive section, where Clara combed through old newspapers. Finally, a headline caught her eye. Local lawyer implicated in fraud scandal. The article detailed accusations against Thomas Grayson, claiming he had been involved in falsifying documents for several prominent families. Although the charges were later dropped, his reputation was ruined, and he left town soon after. Clara's stomach churned. If Grayson had been involved with her father, what did that mean? Had Michael been entangled in something illegal? The thought unsettled her, but she needed answers. She noted down the name of the investigative journalist who had written the article, Jacob Reed. That evening, Clara returned home, her head buzzing with new information. Emily was feeding Ethan, humming softly as the baby cooed in response. How'd it go? Emily asked, looking up. I found out more about Grayson. He was accused of fraud and left town. But there's a reporter who might know more, Clara said. Jacob Reed. Emily nodded. Then we find him. Yeah, Clara said, staring at Ethan. Whatever it takes. As the baby drifted off to sleep, Clara felt a strange mix of hope and dread. Her search for answers was uncovering more than she had anticipated, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the truth would change everything. Jacob Reed's name wasn't hard to trace. As Clara discovered through a quick search at the library, he still lived in Willow Creek. His address led her to a modest cottage on the outskirts of town, tucked behind a grove of oak trees. Clara stood nervously at his door, her hand hesitating before she finally knocked. The door opened to reveal a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a thoughtful gaze. He eyed Clara curiously but with kindness. Can I help you? He asked. Mr. Reed? My name is Clara Adams, she began. I'm trying to find out about someone you wrote about years ago. Thomas Grayson is connected to my father, Michael Adams. Jacob's expression shifted at the mention of Grayson, a shadow passing over his features. He stepped aside, motioning for Clara to enter. Come in. Sounds like you've got a story to tell. The inside of Jacob's cottage was lined with bookshelves and cluttered with stacks of old newspapers. He offered Clara a seat at a worn table, pouring her a cup of tea before sitting across from her. So, Jacob said, leaning forward, what exactly are you trying to uncover? Clara hesitated, the weight of her words heavy. I found a baby abandoned in town. Turns out the child is my half-brother, my father's son, and the name Thomas Grayson keeps coming up. I think he might be the key to understanding why my father left us. Jacob let out a low whistle, sitting back in his chair. That's quite the revelation. I'm sorry you've been dragged into this mess. I remember your father, Michael, a good man from what I knew. But Grayson, he trailed off, shaking his head. Grayson was trouble. What kind of trouble? Clara pressed. Jacob sighed. Grayson had a knack for finding people at their most vulnerable and exploiting them. He ran schemes that targeted families in financial distress, offering to fix their problems in exchange for loyalty, and often silence. Clara's heart sank. Do you think my father was involved in one of his schemes? It's possible, Jacob said. Grayson's reach extended into many lives here. But Michael didn't seem like the type to get involved willingly. If anything, he might have been trying to get out. Get out of what? Clara asked. Jacob tapped his fingers on the table, lost in thought. I don't know for sure, but there were whispers about Grayson using forged documents to claim property and debts that didn't exist. People who crossed him found themselves in deep trouble. Your father might have been trying to protect someone. The pieces were starting to come together, but Clara still felt like she was missing the full picture. Do you know where Grayson is now? Jacob shook his head. He left town after his legal troubles, but there were rumors he relocated to a nearby city, Riverside. If you want answers, that's where you should start. Later that evening, Clara shared everything she had learned with Emily. They sat together on the couch, Ethan nestled between them, his tiny hand gripping Emily's finger. Riverside is only a few hours away, Clara said. If Grayson's there, I need to confront him. Emily looked worried. Do you think it's safe? What if he's dangerous? Clara hesitated but shook her head. I have to know the truth, Emily. For Ethan. For all of us. Emily sighed, stroking Ethan's cheek. Then I'm coming with you. You shouldn't have to face this alone. A sense of relief washed over Clara. Thank you. The next morning, they set out for Riverside. The drive was quiet, both women lost in their thoughts. The city was a stark contrast to Willow Creek, its bustling streets and towering buildings a reminder of how small their hometown was. Clara parked near the address Jacob had provided, a law office bearing the name Grayson and Partners. The building loomed before them, its glass facade gleaming in the sunlight. Clara and Emily exchanged a glance, steeling themselves before stepping inside. The receptionist, a sharp-looking woman with a practiced smile, greeted them. Do you have an appointment? We're here to see Thomas Grayson, Clara said firmly. The receptionist's smile faltered slightly. And who might you be? Clara Adams, she replied. It's about my father, Michael Adams. The receptionist's eyes flickered with recognition. She picked up the phone, murmured something inaudible, and then said, Mr. Grayson will see you now. Thomas Grayson was seated behind a sleek desk in an office lined with bookshelves. He was older than Clara expected, his hair silvered and his posture rigid. His piercing gaze fixed on them as they entered. Miss Adams, he said smoothly, what an unexpected visit. And you've brought a guest. Clara took a deep breath, stepping forward. I need answers, Mr. Grayson, about my father, Michael Adams, and about why his child ended up abandoned. Grayson's expression didn't waver, but there was a flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, in his eyes. He gestured for them to sit. I suppose you've come to learn the truth, he said, his voice calm but laced with something darker. Very well, Miss Adams. I'll tell you everything. Thomas Grayson leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he studied Clara and Emily. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. Clara's hands clenched into fists as she waited for him to speak. Michael Adams, Grayson began, his voice measured, was a man with good intentions but terrible luck. He became entangled in my affairs out of necessity, not choice. What kind of necessity? Clara demanded, her voice sharp. Grayson's gaze flicked to Emily, then back to Clara. Your father was in debt, Miss Adams. Not to me directly, but to people far less patient. He came to me for help when he realized he was in over his head. Clara's stomach churned. Debt? My father never told us anything about that. Of course not, Grayson said with a hint of disdain. He wanted to shield you from it. But he was desperate to protect his family, so he agreed to a deal. In exchange for clearing his debts, he provided certain services. Emily shifted uncomfortably. What kind of services? Grayson's lips curved into a thin smile. Legal favors. Signing documents, acting as a witness to transactions. Nothing overtly illegal at first. But over time, the stakes grew higher, and Michael found himself in deeper than he'd anticipated. Clara's heart pounded. What did you do to him? I didn't do anything, Grayson replied coolly. He made his choices. But when he tried to back out, he discovered how difficult it was to untangle himself. He was afraid for you, for your mother, and later for Emily and the child. Emily's breath hitched, her grip tightening on Clara's arm. He never told me any of this. Grayson raised an eyebrow. He wouldn't have. Michael thought he could manage it alone, but he underestimated the risks. Clara's voice trembled with anger. You're saying my father ruined his life because of you? Grayson tilted his head, unfazed. I'm saying your father made sacrifices for his family. Perhaps more than you realize. The tension in the room was suffocating. Clara felt like the ground beneath her was crumbling. Her father, the man she had resented for years, hadn't abandoned them out of neglect or selfishness. He had been protecting them from dangers she hadn't even known existed. I don't understand, Clara said finally. Why leave us? Why not tell us the truth? Grayson sighed, a flicker of something resembling regret passing over his face. When Michael realized the full extent of the danger, he thought the best way to protect you was to distance himself. He wanted to draw attention away from your family, to ensure you wouldn't be targeted. And what about Emily and Ethan? Clara demanded, her voice breaking. Why didn't he protect them? Grayson's expression darkened. By the time Ethan was born, Michael's health was failing. He came to me one last time asking for help. He wanted to ensure the boy's safety, but there was little I could do by then. His debts were settled, but the damage to his life was done. Emily spoke up, her voice shaking. So he just left us to fend for ourselves? Grayson's gaze softened, just slightly. He thought you would be safer without him. He underestimated how deeply his actions would affect those he loved. Clara's emotions churned as she processed Grayson's words. She had spent so long hating her father for abandoning them, only to learn he had been trying to protect them all along. The weight of that realization settled heavily on her shoulders. Where does that leave us now? Clara asked quietly. What do we do with all of this? Grayson leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. That's up to you, Miss Adams. Your father's story is over, but yours is not. If you truly want to honor his sacrifices, you'll find a way to ensure Ethan's future is secure. And perhaps, in the process, you'll find peace. Clara rose from her chair, her jaw tight. We'll take care of Ethan. But don't think for a second that you're absolved of what you did to my father. Grayson nodded, his expression unreadable. Fair enough. But know this, Michael would have wanted you to forgive. Holding on to anger won't bring him back. As Clara and Emily left the office, the weight of the conversation pressed heavily on their hearts. They walked in silence, the bustling streets of Riverside blurring into the background. Finally, Emily spoke. Do you believe him? Clara hesitated, then nodded. I do. It all makes sense now. Why my father left, why he stayed away. He thought he was doing the right thing. Emily wiped a tear from her cheek. I wish he had told me. I wish he hadn't left us. So do I, Clara said softly. But we can't change the past. All we can do is make sure Ethan has the life he wanted for him. Emily looked at Clara, a glimmer of gratitude in her eyes. Thank you for not giving up on us. Clara managed a small smile. We're family. That's what Michael fought for. And that's what we'll keep fighting for. As they made their way back to Willow Creek, Clara felt a strange sense of clarity. The truth was painful, but it had given her a purpose. To rebuild what had been broken and to give Ethan the future their father had dreamed of. The return to Willow Creek was quiet, both Clara and Emily lost in thought. Ethan stirred in his car seat, his soft gurgles breaking the silence. Clara glanced at him in the rearview mirror, a pang of determination swelling in her chest. Whatever doubts or fears she had, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Ethan deserved better than the circumstances he was born into. Emily turned to Clara, her voice hesitant. Do you think we can do this? Really give him a stable life? Clara gripped the steering wheel tighter. We don't have a choice. We'll figure it out. Back in Willow Creek, the days blurred into a flurry of activity. Clara and Emily worked tirelessly to create a sense of stability. Clara picked up extra shifts at the diner while Emily focused on caring for Ethan. Though the challenges were immense, the small victories, Ethan's first smile, his delighted giggles, brought them both a renewed sense of hope. One evening, as Clara was cleaning up after dinner, a knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Lisa, her best friend, standing with a determined look on her face and a folder clutched in her hands. Lisa? Clara asked, confused. "What are you doing here?" "I've been thinking about everything you told me," Lisa said, stepping inside. "And I did some digging. I think I found something that could help you." Lisa spread out the contents of the folder on the table. It contained property records, financial documents, and old news clippings, all connected to Michael Adams. "I thought you might want to know what your dad was working on before he left," Lisa explained. "It looks like he was fighting to keep a piece of land just outside of Willow Creek. It's in your family's name." Clara stared at the documents, her heart racing. "Land? What land?" Lisa pointed to a faded map. "It's a small plot, nothing fancy. But according to these papers, Michael refused to sell it, even when he was struggling financially. He must have thought it was important." Emily, who had been feeding Ethan nearby, joined them at the table. "Do you think it's still in your name?" Lisa nodded. "It looks like it. The records haven't been updated in years. But the property taxes were paid up until just before Michael passed." Clara's mind whirled. Could this land be the key to securing Ethan's future? If her father had held onto it despite his hardships, it must have meant something to him. "We need to see it," Clara said, her voice firm. The next morning, the three women drove out to the edge of town, following the map's directions. The road grew narrower as they approached the property, surrounded by towering pine trees and wildflowers swaying in the breeze. Finally, they reached a clearing, where an old, weathered cabin stood, partially obscured by overgrown shrubs. "It's beautiful," Emily whispered, stepping out of the car with Ethan in her arms. Clara walked toward the cabin, her footsteps crunching on the gravel path. Despite its state of disrepair, the place had a certain charm, a sense of history and quiet resilience. She pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The cabin was simple, with wooden floors and a stone fireplace. Dust covered every surface, but the structure seemed solid. Clara ran her fingers along the edge of a table, imagining her father sitting there, working late into the night. "This could be it," Lisa said, joining her. "A fresh start. A home." Clara's chest tightened. "It won't be easy. The place needs a lot of work." Emily appeared in the doorway, her expression determined. "Then we'll fix it. Together." The following weeks were filled with hard labor. Clara, Emily, and Lisa spent every spare moment cleaning, repairing, and painting the cabin. Neighbors pitched in, lending tools and offering advice. Even the gruff owner of the hardware store donated supplies when he heard their story. Bit by bit, the cabin transformed into a home. The fireplace roared with warmth, the walls gleamed with fresh paint, and the wildflowers outside framed the property like a postcard. Ethan had a room of his own, filled with toys and a crib that Clara's coworkers had chipped in to buy. One afternoon, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara sat on the cabin's front porch, cradling Ethan in her arms. Emily joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "It's starting to feel real," Emily said, her voice soft. "Like we're really building something." Clara smiled, looking out at the golden light spilling across the trees. "Dad would have loved this place," she said. I think he wanted us to find it." Emily reached over, placing a hand on Clara's. "We'll make it a home. For him. For Ethan." Clara nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they had taken the first step toward building a life filled with hope, love, and the promise of a better future. The cabin had begun to feel like home. The repairs were nearly finished, the furniture was in place, and the once empty rooms now echoed with Ethan's laughter. On a cool autumn morning, Clara found herself sorting through the last of her father's belongings. The box had been tucked away in the attic, left behind like a time capsule waiting to be opened. Emily was in the kitchen with Ethan, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. Lisa had returned to her own life but promised to visit soon. Clara sat cross-legged on the floor, pulling faded papers and photographs from the box. Among the items was an old leather-bound journal, its edges worn from years of use. Clara hesitated before opening it, unsure if she was ready to dive into her father's most private thoughts. But her curiosity won out. The first few pages were filled with notes about the property, measurements, sketches, and ideas for improvements. Then, the tone shifted. Michael's handwriting became more hurried, his words heavier with emotion. I wish I could undo the past. Every decision I've made feels like it's driven me further from the people I love. But I have to believe this is the right path. Grayson's threats are real, and I can't let them touch my family. This land, this cabin. It's my hope for redemption. Clara's hands trembled as she read. Her father hadn't simply been protecting them. He had been planning for their future all along. The land wasn't just a refuge. It was his way of leaving something behind for them to rebuild. Later that afternoon, Clara shared the journal with Emily. They sat on the porch, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of pine and freshly fallen leaves. I think he was trying to make amends, Clara said, handing Emily the journal. Even when he wasn't with us, he was fighting for us. Emily flipped through the pages, her expression a mixture of sorrow and admiration. He must have loved you so much, she said, to sacrifice everything like this. Clara nodded, tears pricking her eyes. It's hard to stay angry at him now. He was trying so hard to do the right thing, even if it meant hurting us in the short term. Emily reached over, squeezing Clara's hand. We're here now because of him, and I think he'd be proud of what we've done. That evening, as the sky turned shades of gold and violet, Clara ventured to the edge of the property. She had always felt drawn to the small creek that ran alongside the cabin, its gentle babbling providing a sense of calm. She stood there, lost in thought, when she heard a rustling in the woods. Clara, a familiar voice called out. She turned to see Lisa approaching, a manila envelope in her hands. Her expression was serious, her usual bright demeanor replaced by something heavier. I found something else, Lisa said, handing Clara the envelope. Clara opened it cautiously. Inside were documents, a deed to the property, an old will, and a letter addressed to her. The letter was brief but heartfelt. Clara, if you're reading this, then you've found the cabin. I hope it brings you the peace I couldn't give you while I was alive. Take care of it. Take care of each other. And know that everything I did was for you. Dad, tears streamed down Clara's face as she clutched the letter to her chest. It wasn't just words on paper. It was an unspoken apology, a bridge to the father she had lost. Lisa placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. He never stopped loving you, Clara. You were his world. I know, Clara whispered, her voice breaking. I just wish I could have told him I understand now. As Clara walked back to the cabin that night, the weight of her father's sacrifices settled over her. But for the first time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a gift, a chance to start anew. Ethan's laughter greeted her as she stepped inside, and Emily's warm smile reminded her that they were no longer alone. Together, they were building the future Michael had dreamed of, one step at a time. The first snowfall of the season dusted the trees surrounding the cabin, transforming the property into a winter wonderland. Clara stood at the window, cradling a mug of hot cocoa, her gaze fixed on Ethan playing with Emily near the fireplace. The cabin felt alive, a far cry from the empty shell it had been when they first arrived. But something still lingered in Clara's mind, an unanswered question, a piece of the puzzle she couldn't ignore. Her father's journal, the letter, and the property itself had all revealed parts of his story, yet she felt there was more he hadn't said. Emily noticed Clara's pensive expression and approached her. What's on your mind? Clara hesitated, then sighed. It's my dad. I feel like there's still something he wanted me to know, something unfinished. Emily placed a reassuring hand on Clara's arm. Maybe it's not about what he wanted you to know. Maybe it's about what he wanted you to feel. He wanted you to know you were loved. Clara nodded, though the restless ache in her chest remained. Later that evening, while Emily was putting Ethan to bed, Clara ventured into the woods behind the cabin. The moonlight reflected off the snow, casting an ethereal glow on the landscape. She had always found solace here, among the tall pines and the quiet hum of the creek. As she walked, she felt an inexplicable pull, as though she were being guided. Her steps led her to an old oak tree near the edge of the property. Its gnarled branches stretched toward the sky, and at its base was a small wooden box, half buried beneath fallen leaves and snow. Clara knelt, brushing away the debris. Her breath caught as she opened the box, revealing a collection of items. A faded photograph of her family, a small toy truck that had once belonged to her as a child, and another letter in her father's handwriting. The letter was longer than the first, its tone more intimate. Clara, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I can only hope that you'll understand why I made the choices I did. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the only way I could protect you. This cabin was my sanctuary, my place to dream of a better future for you and your mother. I kept it for you, knowing that one day, it would become your sanctuary too. You've always been stronger than you know. I see it in the way you face the world, even when it's unkind. You remind me so much of your mother, her courage, her grace. Take care of the ones you love, Clara. That's what life is about. Ethan will need you, just as you needed me. And though I wasn't always there, I hope you can carry my love with you as you move forward. With all my heart, Dad, ***, tears blurred Clara's vision as she read the letter. For years, she had resented her father, clinging to the pain of his absence. But now, she felt that pain begin to dissolve, replaced by a bittersweet understanding. She sat beneath the oak tree for what felt like hours, the cold biting at her skin, but her heart felt warm. Her father's words had reached across time and space, filling the void she had carried for so long. When Clara returned to the cabin, Emily was waiting for her, a concerned look on her face. You've been gone a while. Are you okay? Clara held up the letter, her lips trembling with a smile. I found this. This is from my dad. Emily's eyes softened. What does it say? Clara handed her the letter, watching as Emily read it. When she finished, she looked at Clara with tears in her own eyes. He loved you so much. You know that now, right? Clara nodded. I do. And I think I can finally let go of the anger. He did what he thought was best. And because of him, we're here. Emily pulled her into a hug. And for the first time, Clara allowed herself to fully embrace the peace she had been searching for. That night, as the cabin settled into quiet, Clara sat by the fire, Ethan sleeping soundly in her lap. She gazed into the flickering flames, her father's words echoing in her mind. The past could not be changed, but the future was theirs to shape. And for the first time, Clara felt ready to embrace it. The cabin buzzed with life on Christmas morning, its hearth crackling warmly as Ethan toddled around, giggling at the sound of wrapping paper being torn. Clara sat cross-legged on the rug, watching as Emily helped Ethan open his first gift, a soft, handmade blanket adorned with tiny stars. This is from the neighbor, Emily said with a smile, holding up a note that accompanied the gift. She said every home needs a touch of starlight. Clara chuckled, feeling a warmth that went deeper than the fire in the hearth. The past few months had transformed not only the cabin but also their lives. This was no longer just a place to live. It was a home, one built on love, resilience, and the memory of her father. After the festivities, while Ethan napped in his crib, Clara stepped outside, the snow crunching softly beneath her boots. The woods were quiet, save for the occasional chirp of a bird. She walked toward the old oak tree where she had found her father's final letter, feeling its presence like an anchor grounding her in the moment. Clara had planted wildflowers around the tree, their stems now dormant under the snow. But she knew they would bloom again, just as her life had begun to bloom after years of uncertainty and loss. Emily joined her, wrapping a shawl tightly around her shoulders. He'd be proud of you, she said softly. Clara glanced at her, a faint smile playing on her lips. Of us, she corrected. Emily nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. Of us. The cabin became a haven not only for Clara and Emily but for their community. Neighbors often stopped by, bringing small tokens of support, fresh-baked bread, tools for repairs, stories to share by the fire. It was as though Michael's dream of creating a sanctuary for his family had extended to the people around them. Clara found herself embracing the role of protector, not just for Ethan but for the legacy her father had left behind. She tended to the cabin, to the land, and to the relationships she had once thought were beyond saving. Lisa visited frequently, bringing her boundless energy and a knack for brightening even the darkest days. Together, the women formed a tight-knit family, one bound not by blood, but by shared experiences and unwavering support. One evening, months later, Clara sat on the porch with Ethan on her lap, the sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Emily brought out 2 mugs of tea, setting one beside Clara before taking the seat next to her. "Do you think he'd believe we'd make it this far?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with wonder. Clara looked out at the trees, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. "I think he always believed in us, even when we didn't believe in ourselves." Emily smiled, reaching over to squeeze Clara's hand. "Thank you for not giving up. On him, on us." Clara turned to her, her gaze steady. "It was never just about me. It was about Ethan. About all of us. We're a family now, and that's what matters." As the stars began to dot the sky, Clara felt a sense of contentment she hadn't known was possible. The cabin, once a symbol of her father's absence, had become a testament to his love. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the people she cared for most, Clara realized she was no longer defined by the pain of the past. She was living for the future. A future her father had fought to give them, one filled with hope, joy, and the promise of brighter days ahead. The cabin's windows glowed warmly against the night, a beacon of all that had been lost and found. The end. Girl receives a mysterious Christmas gift from someone she doesn't know. When the mysterious sender reveals himself, the girl can't hold back her tears. December had draped the city of Burlington, Vermont, in a pristine blanket of snow, as if the world itself had taken a moment to hold its breath in awe of the holiday season. For 19-year-old Ellie Harper, this time of year was bittersweet. With her parents gone on a medical research trip to South Africa, her holiday plans revolved around quiet nights and distant phone calls. It was the morning of December 20th when Ellie found the package on her front porch. The small box, wrapped in red and gold foil, was adorned with an elegant silver bow. There was no return address, no sender information, only her name written in delicate calligraphy on a cream-colored tag. To Ellie, curiosity piqued. Ellie brought it inside, her breath visible in the chilly air. She placed the box on the dining table, its vibrant wrapping a stark contrast to the rustic wooden surface. Her fingers trembled slightly as she untied the ribbon and carefully removed the paper. Inside was a handcrafted snow globe. The scene within depicted a cozy cabin surrounded by snow-covered pine trees, a warm glow emanating from its tiny windows. As Ellie shook the globe, soft glitter swirled inside, creating a magical storm of gold and white. She noticed an inscription at the base, carved in neat, blocky letters. "For all the warmth you bring to the world." Ellie's heart quickened. Who could have sent this? She had no admirers, no secret friends. And why this particular gift? The rest of her day was consumed by the mystery of the snow globe. She texted her closest friends, Sarah and Liam, but neither claimed responsibility. Even her parents, when she called them later that evening, were as baffled as she was. "Maybe someone sees you as a Christmas miracle," her father had teased, chuckling warmly. Ellie rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her growing curiosity. That night, she placed the snow globe on her nightstand. The soft golden light from her lamp reflected off the glitter, casting a warm, comforting glow across her room. For the first time in weeks, Ellie felt a sense of peace, as though she weren't entirely alone. Yet, as she drifted to sleep, a thought tugged at the edges of her mind. Who knew her well enough to send such a meaningful gift, and why hadn't they revealed themselves? The mystery deepened the next morning. As Ellie stepped outside to fetch the newspaper, she noticed a small envelope tucked beneath the globe on her porch. Inside was a note written on crisp parchment, the ink flowing in the same elegant script as before. "Sometimes the best gifts come from those we least expect. Keep believing." Ellie felt a shiver, not from the cold but from the eeriness of it all. Whoever the sender was, they knew her habits and her address, and they seemed to understand her heart more intimately than she cared to admit. But she resolved not to let fear overtake the enchantment of the gesture. Burlington, with its close-knit community, had a way of bringing people together in ways Ellie hadn't yet understood. And maybe, just maybe, the answer to this puzzle would reveal itself, wrapped in something even more surprising than she could imagine. As the snow fell heavier that evening, Ellie decided to keep the globe on her bedside table once more. Little did she know, the sender's intentions went beyond mere holiday cheer. Each snowflake outside her window seemed to whisper of miracles yet to unfold, carrying her toward a revelation that would change her life forever. The days crept closer to Christmas, and Ellie's routine grew laced with quiet anticipation. Each morning, she checked the porch for another note or gift, but none came. Still, the mystery of the snow globe lingered like a sweet aftertaste, filling her thoughts as she wandered through the modest downtown shops and sipped hot cocoa at her favorite cafe. On Christmas Eve morning, the stillness was broken. Ellie awoke to the soft hum of carols drifting from the radio she always left on overnight. As her eyes adjusted to the light, her heart skipped. A small velvet box sat beside the snow globe on her nightstand. She blinked, unsure how it had gotten there. She was certain she had locked her doors and windows the night before. A chill raced down her spine, but it quickly gave way to curiosity. Swallowing her unease, Ellie opened the box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, its chain adorned with a single charm, a snowflake encrusted with tiny crystals that sparkled like stars. Her pulse quickened. This was no random act of kindness. The craftsmanship of the bracelet spoke of intentionality, of someone who knew her well enough to understand the simplicity she adored. But who? The thought gnawed at her as she dressed and headed into town to pick up groceries for her small Christmas dinner. The streets of Burlington buzzed with the festive energy of last-minute shoppers. Lights blinked from every window, and children's laughter rang through the frosty air. At the corner bakery, Ellie stood in line, her basket filled with cranberry scones and candied pecans. Ellie! She turned to see Sarah rushing toward her, wrapped in a bright green scarf that clashed cheerfully with her auburn hair. Sarah, what are you doing here? I thought you were spending Christmas with your family in Boston. We got snowed in, Sarah replied, grinning, which means I get to bother you instead. How's the Christmas prep going? Ellie hesitated. Should she tell Sarah about the gifts? The question must have shown on her face because Sarah tilted her head. What's up? She asked, lowering her voice. You look like you've got a secret. Ellie laughed nervously, deciding it was too strange to keep to herself any longer. Okay, but you have to promise not to freak out. As they sat at a nearby cafe, Ellie recounted everything. The snow globe, the bracelet, the mysterious notes. Sarah's eyes grew wide, her excitement palpable. That's incredible. It's so romantic, she gushed. You have a secret admirer. Maybe it's someone you see every day but never noticed, like the barista at the coffee shop or that guy at the bookstore. Sarah, Ellie said, rolling her eyes. This isn't a rom-com, it's unnerving. Unnerving? Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Ellie, someone is paying attention to you. Someone cares enough to do something thoughtful. It's not unnerving, it's sweet. Besides, you deserve it. Ellie felt a wave of warmth at her friend's words, but the unease lingered. Sarah could call it romantic all she wanted, but Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that the gifts were more than random acts of affection. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky filled with a soft indigo glow, Ellie returned home. Her tiny apartment seemed especially quiet, the air thick with expectancy. She couldn't explain it, but it was as if the snow globe itself was waiting. She moved it to her kitchen counter, running her fingers over the inscription. For all the warmth you bring to the world. The words felt heavier now, as though they carried a promise she wasn't sure she could fulfill. As Ellie prepared for bed, the sharp sound of a knock at her door startled her. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. No one ever came by unannounced, especially not this late. Grabbing a nearby umbrella as a makeshift weapon, Ellie approached the door cautiously. Who is it? She called out, her voice steadier than she felt. Silence. Heart pounding, Ellie cracked the door open just enough to peer outside. On her porch sat another package, this one wrapped in simple brown paper. She glanced around, but the street was empty, cloaked in the stillness of freshly fallen snow. Swallowing her fear, Ellie brought the package inside and unwrapped it. Beneath the paper was a book, an old leather-bound volume titled The Winter's Tale. She opened the cover and found a handwritten note tucked inside. The answers lie in the pages. Sometimes the story we're searching for isn't written for us, but about us. Ellie's hands trembled as she traced the elegant script. The sender wasn't just leaving gifts. They were trying to tell her something. She flipped through the book, the faint smell of aged paper filling the air. Tucked between the last pages was a photograph. It was of a young girl, no older than 5, sitting in a field of daisies. Her wide smile and bright eyes were achingly familiar. Ellie's breath hitched. It was her. Her world tilted, the room spinning as questions collided in her mind. How did they have this photo? Who could know her so intimately? And why did they want her to believe? For the first time, Ellie wasn't sure if she was part of a beautiful mystery or an unsettling revelation that would upend everything she thought she knew. Ellie stared at the photograph, her mind racing. She recognized the field, an expanse of wildflowers on the outskirts of her grandparents' property in Maine. That summer had been magical, filled with carefree laughter and the comforting presence of her grandmother. The memory was bittersweet. Her grandparents had passed years ago, and the house was sold shortly after. Whoever had sent this knew not just about her life now but her past as well. The thought made her feel both seen and exposed. Clutching the book, Ellie paced her small living room, her thoughts spiraling. She picked up her phone and called Sarah. "Hey," Sarah answered, her voice groggy. "It's late. What's wrong?" Ellie's words spilled out in a rush. She told her about the book, the photo, and the cryptic note. "That's really specific," Sarah said, her voice waking with interest. "The photo, Ellie. How would anyone else have that?" "That's what I can't figure out," Ellie replied, her voice trembling. "It's not like I've shared this picture online or anything. And that field. It's so far removed from my life now. Do you think it could be a family member?" Sarah asked. Ellie frowned, sinking into her couch. "If it were, they'd have just told me, wouldn't they? And why all the secrecy?" "Maybe they think this is the best way to reach you," Sarah suggested gently. The idea made sense, but it didn't sit right. Ellie's family wasn't one for elaborate gestures or enigmas. Her parents, pragmatic as ever, would have called her outright. And her extended family, well, she hardly spoke to them. "Should I go to the police?" Ellie asked hesitantly. Sarah hesitated. "Do you feel threatened?" Ellie shook her head, even though Sarah couldn't see her. "No, it's not that. It's just unsettling." "Then maybe just wait," Sarah advised. "See if they reveal themselves. Whoever this is, it feels like they're building up to something." Ellie sighed. She wanted to agree, but the weight of the mystery pressed on her chest. "Thanks, Sarah. I'll talk to you tomorrow." "Ellie, if you need anything, I'm here," Sarah said firmly before hanging up. That night, Ellie barely slept. The photograph remained on her nightstand, a tangible connection to her past and the questions now haunting her. When dawn broke, she decided she couldn't wait passively anymore. She bundled up and drove to the Burlington Public Library, the photograph and The Winter's Tale tucked into her bag. If there were clues in the book, she'd need to read it closely. The library was nearly empty, its warmth a sharp contrast to the icy streets outside. Ellie found a quiet corner and opened the book. Her eyes scanned the first few pages, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the photograph. She pulled it out, her fingers tracing the image. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Ellie looked up, startled. A man about her age stood before her, his kind eyes framed by wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a dark coat dusted with snowflakes. "No, go ahead," she said, sliding her things closer to give him space. "Thanks," he said, setting down a stack of books. As he sat, he glanced at the photo in Ellie's hand. "That's a beautiful shot." Ellie hesitated. There was nothing suspicious about him, but her paranoia had grown overnight. "Thanks," she murmured, tucking the photo back into the book. The man smiled politely and turned his attention to his own reading. Ellie tried to focus again, but her curiosity got the better of her. She cleared her throat. "Sorry to bother you," she began. "Do you know much about Shakespeare?" He looked up, his eyes lighting up. "A bit. I'm a literature student at UVM." "Why?" Ellie hesitated, then slid The Winter's Tale across the table. "I was given this recently, and I was told the answers I'm looking for are in the pages. But I'm not sure where to start." The man tilted his head, intrigued. "That's cryptic." The Winter's Tale is one of Shakespeare's later works. It's a mix of tragedy and comedy, kind of about second chances, redemption, and unexpected reunions. "What answers are you looking for?" Ellie bit her lip. She wasn't ready to explain everything. "Just personal ones," she said vaguely. He nodded, seeming to respect her privacy. "I'd focus on the themes of forgiveness and discovery," he suggested. "There's a lot about reconciling with the past." His words struck a chord, and Ellie felt a glimmer of clarity. Perhaps the gift wasn't just about the book's story, but about her own. That evening, Ellie returned home feeling lighter. The man's words lingered, giving her a sense of direction. She placed the book and photograph back on her nightstand and stared at the snow globe, its glitter swirling in the dim light. She whispered aloud to the empty room, "Who are you? And what do you want me to see?" As if in answer, a soft knock sounded at her door. Her heart leapt, and she rushed to the entryway. But when she opened the door, no one was there, only a small envelope resting on the mat. With trembling hands, Ellie picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a single sentence written in the same elegant script. "Look closer. There's always more than meets the eye." Ellie's gaze darted to the snow globe. She lifted it, examining it from every angle. Then she noticed something new, a small latch concealed at the base. Her breath caught as she flipped the latch and the bottom of the globe popped open. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the faint handwriting. It was a letter, one addressed to her grandmother, and it was signed by someone Ellie had never heard of before, Arthur T. Merritt. Questions swirled faster than the glitter in the globe, pulling Ellie into a mystery that stretched far beyond her lifetime. Ellie's hands trembled as she held the fragile letter. The ink, though faded, was still legible, the handwriting elegant and deliberate. She read the first few lines, her heart racing. "Dearest Margaret, I hope this letter finds you in good health and spirits. Though we've been apart for many years, I often find my thoughts drifting to the summers in Maine. Margaret," her grandmother. The letter was personal, filled with nostalgic details about the wildflower field and warm evenings spent under the stars. Yet, one sentence stood out, searing itself into Ellie's mind. "Though I've never been able to speak of it, know that my gratitude for the warmth and kindness you showed me has shaped my life. I owe you more than words could express." Ellie sat down, the letter slipping from her fingers onto the table. Who was Arthur T. Merritt? And why would someone go to such lengths to bring this letter back to her family? The next morning, Ellie decided to follow the only lead she had, her grandmother's old home in Maine. She hadn't been there since she was a child, but the memories were vivid enough to guide her. The trip took nearly 5 hours. Snow flurries swirled as she drove along winding roads, the fields and forests of her childhood rushing past like ghosts from another time. When she finally arrived at the small coastal town, Ellie's heart ached at the sight of the familiar landmarks. The house itself stood much as she remembered it, though time had softened its once crisp edges. The current owners had maintained the pale blue paint and wooden shutters, but the garden her grandmother had adored now lay buried beneath a blanket of snow. Ellie parked a short distance away, reluctant to intrude on the new occupants. Instead, she wandered toward the wildflower field where the photo in the snow globe had been taken. The landscape was unrecognizable under the snow, but Ellie could almost see the vibrant daisies and feel the summer sun on her face. As she stood there, she noticed an older man approaching from a nearby trail. He wore a heavy coat and a scarf wrapped snugly around his neck. Though his steps were slow, there was a determination in his gait. "Are you lost?" he called out, his voice carrying easily across the frosty air. Ellie turned toward him. "No, just reminiscing." she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. The man smiled faintly, his gray eyes thoughtful. It's a good spot for that. I've spent many an afternoon here myself. Used to know the woman who lived in that house. He gestured toward her grandmother's old home. Ellie's pulse quickened. You knew Margaret Harper? His expression softened. I did. She was a remarkable woman. Kind to everyone she met. He paused, studying Ellie's face. You're her granddaughter, aren't you? Ellie blinked in surprise. How did you know? The man chuckled. You look just like her when she was younger. Same determined eyes. Ellie felt a swell of emotion. Did you know an Arthur Merritt? She asked, watching closely for his reaction. His smile faded, replaced by a look of quiet sorrow. I did, he said after a moment. Arthur was my older brother. Ellie's breath caught. She gestured toward a nearby bench, and they sat down together as the man, introduced as Henry Merritt, shared his story. Arthur and Margaret were close when they were young, Henry began. He met her during a summer she spent here, helping out a local family. They bonded over books, music, and the kind of conversations you don't forget. But life took them in different directions. Henry sighed, his breath visible in the cold air. Arthur moved away after the war, and though he tried to stay in touch, letters don't always make it through the years. But he never forgot your grandmother. Said she was one of the few people who truly understood him. Ellie showed him the letter, careful not to let the brittle paper tear. Henry read it, his hands steady despite the emotion that flickered in his eyes. This was written not long before Arthur passed, Henry said quietly. He'd always wanted to send it, but I suppose he didn't know how. After he died, I found it among his things. I meant to deliver it myself, but I never got the chance. Ellie's heart ached as she listened. Do you know who could have sent it to me now? Henry shook his head. No, but it's clear someone wanted you to know the connection you share with him. And with your grandmother. That evening, Ellie returned to her hotel, her mind spinning with possibilities. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to form a picture, but the edges were still blurred. She felt an overwhelming need to honor Arthur's memory, but she didn't know how. As she sat by the window, staring at the snow-covered town, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. Did you find what you were looking for? Ellie's fingers hovered over the screen, her heart pounding. Whoever this was, they knew about her trip, and they were watching her every step. She hesitated, then typed back. Who are you? Why are you doing this? The reply came almost instantly. Sometimes the past holds the key to what we need most in the present. Look deeper. Ellie stared at the message, the words echoing in her mind. She wasn't just uncovering a story from her family's past. She was living it. Ellie barely slept that night, her thoughts tangled in the cryptic message and Henry's revelations. Who was guiding her along this journey, and why did it feel so deeply personal? The sender knew things no stranger could possibly know. As morning light seeped into her hotel room, Ellie resolved to act. She had come this far, and the only way to find the truth was to keep following the breadcrumbs. She texted Sarah, updating her on everything that had happened. Sarah's reply was immediate. This is huge. Whoever they are, they're clearly invested in you finding something important. Maybe it's bigger than just the letter. Ellie sighed, her chest tightening. She knew Sarah was right. Her first stop that day was the town's public records office. The building was small but well organized, and a helpful clerk guided her to a file on the Merritt family. Arthur Merritt, she learned, had been a teacher, a lover of literature, and an active volunteer in the community. He had no children and had spent his final years alone after Henry moved to another state. Among the papers was a copy of Arthur's will. To her surprise, there was a note attached, a handwritten postscript addressed to Margaret Harper. To Margaret, should this ever reach you, I want you to know that the books we read and the letters we shared remain among my most treasured memories. Thank you for teaching me to believe in kindness and to see the beauty in the smallest moments. Ellie's throat tightened as she read the words. The tone of the note mirrored the snow globe's inscription. For all the warmth you bring to the world, Arthur had clearly held onto his feelings for her grandmother. But the deeper question remained. Why was this connection being brought to her now? Her next destination was a small antique bookstore Henry had mentioned, a place Arthur used to frequent. The shop, page and lantern, smelled of old paper and wood polish, its shelves lined with volumes that bore the weight of countless stories. Ellie browsed aimlessly at first, running her fingers along the spines of books, until a soft voice interrupted her. "Can I help you?" She turned to find a young woman with curly hair and warm brown eyes standing behind the counter. Her name tag read Leah. "I'm looking for books or records connected to Arthur Merritt," Ellie explained. Leah's face lit up. Arthur was a favorite of ours. He loved this place. He even donated a few rare books from his personal collection before he passed. Ellie's heart skipped. "Do you still have them?" Leah nodded and disappeared into the back room, returning with a small stack of books. Ellie's hands trembled as she sifted through them. The titles ranged from poetry to philosophy, but one in particular caught her attention: the collected poems of Emily Dickinson. Inside the cover, Arthur had written an inscription. "For those who see beauty in the fleeting, may these words be a reminder of all that endures." Tucked between the pages was a folded slip of paper. Ellie unfolded it to reveal a sketch, a simple drawing of a snow globe, almost identical to the one she had received. Her breath hitched. It was unmistakable now. Arthur's influence extended far beyond the letter. The snow globe and the messages were tied to his life story and, somehow, to hers. As Ellie left the bookstore, the weight of the discovery pressed against her chest. Snow began to fall in thick, soft flakes, muffling the sounds of the world around her. She was about to step into her car when her phone buzzed again. "You're closer than you think. Follow the light." Ellie stared at the screen, her hands shaking. She looked up at the darkening sky, the falling snow casting everything in muted shades of white and gray. In the distance, a single street lamp flickered against the gloom. Her instincts told her to follow it. The lamp led her to the edge of the wildflower field, now blanketed in snow. The sight was eerily beautiful, and Ellie felt a pang of nostalgia for the summers she had spent here with her grandmother. In the center of the field stood a figure, their back turned to her. They were wrapped in a long coat, their silhouette blurred by the snow. Ellie's breath caught. She hesitated for a moment before calling out, "Hello?" The figure turned slowly. It was Henry. "I thought I might find you here," he said, his voice gentle. "What are you doing out here?" Ellie asked, her confusion mounting. "I remembered something after we spoke yesterday," Henry said, taking a step closer. "Arthur used to talk about this field, about how it was a place where he felt connected to the people he loved most. I thought you might come back here, too." Ellie's heart ached at the thought. "Why now, Henry? Why is all of this happening now?" Henry hesitated, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps because it's time." Arthur believed that love and kindness ripple outward, touching lives in ways we can't always see. Maybe someone out there felt it was time for his story, and your family's story, to come full circle. Ellie looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears. "Do you think he knew I'd be the one to find all of this?" Henry's lips curved into a faint smile. "Arthur always said that the right stories find the right people. And you, Ellie, you're part of that story now." As they stood together in the snow-covered field, Ellie felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The mystery wasn't entirely solved, but the pieces were falling into place. She wasn't just uncovering the past. She was reclaiming it. And somehow, she knew the answers she sought would lead her to something more profound than she had ever imagined. The stillness of the field followed Ellie back to her hotel room. The snow globe now felt heavier in her hands, as if it carried the weight of Arthur's unsent words and the memories it held. Henry's words lingered too. "You're part of that story now." Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that she was being guided, not just by Arthur's legacy, but by someone with an intimate knowledge of her life. That thought sent a chill through her, not one of fear, but of urgency. Before bed, she carefully unfolded the letter from Arthur again. Her eyes scanned the handwriting, the details etched into each loop and line. Then she noticed something she hadn't before, a faint indentation on the back of the page. Grabbing a pencil, Ellie gently shaded over the back of the letter. Slowly, words emerged, their ghostly imprint forming a new message. The key is where stories are kept safe. She stared at the message, her pulse quickening. The key, where stories are kept safe. The first place that came to mind was her grandmother's old library. The next morning, Ellie left her hotel early and drove to the house where her grandmother had lived. The new owners weren't home, so Ellie lingered by the fence, gazing at the windows. The library had been her grandmother's sanctuary, a room filled with light and rows of books that bore the marks of frequent use. Her mind raced with possibilities. If the key, literal or metaphorical, was hidden there, she had to get inside. As she paced the sidewalk, a voice startled her. Looking for something? Ellie turned to see a man in his 60s, bundled in a heavy coat and scarf, his eyes sharp but kind. I didn't mean to trespass, Ellie said quickly. I was just visiting. The man smiled faintly. You must be Margaret Harper's granddaughter. I'm Tom. I live next door. Ellie's heart lifted with hope. I am. Did you know her well? She was a good friend, Tom said, his expression softening. Used to share her pies with my family. I bought this house when the new owners moved in. Never felt quite right seeing someone else in her place. I was hoping to take a look inside, Ellie admitted. There's something I need to find, but I didn't want to bother the new owners. Tom hesitated, then motioned for her to follow him. They're away for the holidays. I'm keeping an eye on the place. I can let you in. The library smelled exactly as Ellie remembered. A blend of aged paper, cedar, and the faintest trace of lavender. As she stood among the bookshelves, memories flooded back. Sitting cross-legged on the floor while her grandmother read aloud, her voice carrying the rhythm of the words like music. What are you looking for? Tom asked, standing by the door. I'm not sure, Ellie admitted. Something connected to Arthur Merritt. Maybe a hidden compartment or a letter. Tom nodded and began inspecting the shelves. Ellie did the same, her fingers brushing over book spines and dusty corners. Then she spotted it. A leather-bound journal tucked behind a row of poetry collections. Carefully, she pulled it out. The cover bore her grandmother's initials, M.H., embossed in gold. Opening it, Ellie found pages filled with meticulous notes. Margaret had written about her favorite books, her daily reflections, and her correspondence with Arthur. One entry stopped Ellie cold. July 15, 1963. Arthur spoke of a snow globe today, one he planned to gift me. He said it symbolized the way small, beautiful moments can be preserved forever. I told him it was a lovely thought, but I never saw it. Perhaps he kept it for another time. Ellie ran her fingers over the words, tears welling in her eyes. The snow globe on her nightstand wasn't just a gift. It was a part of her family's story, tied to a love that had never been fully realized. Near the back of the journal, Ellie found a drawing of a simple map. It marked the wildflower field and a nearby grove of trees. Beneath it, her grandmother had written, "For when the time is right." Ellie left the library clutching the journal, her heart pounding. She thanked Tom and drove straight to the wildflower field. Snow blanketed the ground, but the map had indicated a specific tree in the grove. After nearly an hour of searching, Ellie spotted a large oak with a hollowed-out center. Inside, wrapped in weathered cloth, was a small tin box. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a second letter, this one addressed to Ellie Harper. Asterisk, dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, then perhaps you've followed the trail Arthur and I began many years ago. I always believed that love, whether in friendships, family, or something deeper, has a way of finding its path through time. You are part of that love, Ellie. Arthur saw in me the kindness he wished for in the world, and I see it in you. Take these stories with you, but also know that they are yours to continue. The snow globe you hold is a reminder that even the smallest moments can carry infinite beauty. Cherish them and let them guide you. With all my love, Grandma Margaret. Ellie sat in the snow, tears streaming down her face as the weight of the mystery finally made sense. The snow globe wasn't just a gift. It was a bridge, a way for her grandmother and Arthur to show her that the love they had cherished was still alive, rippling through her own life. And somewhere, whoever had sent the globe and guided her to this moment was waiting for her next step. Ellie returned to her hotel, the letter from her grandmother clutched tightly in her hand. The words resonated deeply, filling her with a sense of both closure and responsibility. The snow globe sat beside her as she replayed the events of the past few days in her mind. The puzzle pieces were aligning, but one question remained. Who had sent the snow globe and orchestrated this journey? The answer had to be close, and Ellie was determined to find it. She glanced at her phone. The cryptic messages had ceased since the previous night, but the sender clearly wasn't done. Whoever it was, they had led her this far and seemed to know her every move. As the snow fell gently outside, Ellie found herself drawn to the snow globe again. She turned it over in her hands, marveling at its craftsmanship. The inscription, "For all the warmth you bring to the world," felt personal now, a reflection of her grandmother's sentiments. Then something struck her. The latch at the base of the globe, the one she'd found earlier, had a second compartment. Ellie hesitated, her pulse quickening, before gently pressing against it. A soft click echoed through the room, and a tiny drawer slid open. Inside was a folded piece of paper, much smaller than the letter she had found earlier. With trembling fingers, Ellie opened it. "Ellie, this is the final step. Meet me at the wildflower field at dawn. Bring the snow globe. A friend." The message was short, but it was enough to set Ellie's heart racing. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself. Whoever this friend was, they had been waiting for this moment as much as she had. The next morning, Ellie bundled herself in her warmest coat and scarf, the snow globe secured in her bag. The air was crisp, the faint light of dawn casting a soft pink hue across the snow-covered landscape. When she arrived at the wildflower field, she saw someone standing near the grove of trees. Her breath hitched as she approached, her boots crunching softly in the snow. The figure turned. A man in his early 30s with dark, thoughtful eyes and a calm demeanor. He smiled gently as Ellie drew closer. "You made it," he said, his voice warm and steady. Ellie blinked in confusion. "Who are you? And why did you send me all of this?" "My name is Nathan," he said, stepping forward. "I'm a historian, and, in a way, a messenger. I've spent years collecting stories like Arthur's and Margaret's, ensuring they aren't forgotten. But this one, your family's story, felt incomplete. I wanted to help you find it." Ellie stared at him, her mind racing. "But how did you know all of this? How did you find the snow globe, the letters?" Nathan's expression softened. "Arthur's belongings ended up in an estate sale after he passed. I bought a collection of his books, journals, and personal items. Among them was the snow globe and a letter he had written but never sent. That letter spoke about Margaret and the life he wished he could have shared with her. It moved me deeply, and I knew it had to be returned to her family. To you." Ellie's eyes welled with tears. "You've been guiding me this whole time?" Nathan nodded. "I thought it might be overwhelming to give you everything at once. I wanted you to experience the journey, just as Arthur and Margaret had. And in doing so, I hoped you'd feel the love and connection they shared." Ellie pulled the snow globe from her bag, holding it up to the soft morning light. "It all started with this." Nathan smiled. "It's more than just a gift. It's a symbol of their story, and now yours." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the journey settling between them. "I don't know how to thank you," Ellie said, her voice breaking. Nathan shook his head. "You don't need to. This story belongs to you now. All I ask is that you carry it forward, in whatever way feels right." Ellie nodded, the morning air filling her lungs with a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just uncovering a forgotten story. She was becoming part of it, weaving her own chapter into the legacy of love, kindness, and the enduring beauty of connection. And in that moment, surrounded by the stillness of the field and the quiet hum of history, Ellie knew her life would never be the same. The wildflower field seemed to hold its breath as Ellie and Nathan stood together, their words fading into the crisp morning air. The snow globe felt like an anchor in her hands, tethering her to the legacy of her grandmother and Arthur. A story of love and courage that had transcended time. "I have to ask," Ellie said finally, her voice soft. "Why me? Why now?" Nathan met her gaze, his dark eyes thoughtful. "Because it's your story, Ellie. Arthur and Margaret's connection didn't end with them. Their love for life, for kindness, it lives on in you. When I discovered the snow globe, I knew it wasn't meant to sit on a shelf. It was meant to reach you. Ellie swallowed the lump in her throat, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. And what now? What do I do with all of this? That's up to you, Nathan said. The snow globe, the letters, the memories. They're pieces of something greater. You can hold on to them as reminders, or you can share them, letting their story inspire others. Ellie spent the rest of the day reflecting on Nathan's words. She returned to her hotel room and laid everything out. The letters, her grandmother's journal, the map, and the snow globe. Each item was a piece of a puzzle that had taken her on a journey of discovery. Not just of her family's past, but of herself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the town in a golden glow, Ellie made a decision. The next morning, she drove back to Burlington. Her apartment felt different when she walked in, not as empty or quiet as it had before. It felt alive, brimming with the echoes of the people and places that had brought her here. Ellie pulled out her laptop and began to write. At first, the words came slowly, but soon they flowed as though she were channeling the voices of Margaret and Arthur. She wrote about the snow globe, about the letters and the field. She wrote about love, the kind that lingers long after goodbyes. For days, Ellie worked tirelessly, pouring everything she had into the story. And when it was done, she knew exactly what to do next. A week later, Ellie stood at the small Burlington Community Center, her story printed and bound into simple booklets. The center was hosting a holiday gathering, and Ellie had arranged to share the tale with the attendees. The room buzzed with warmth and chatter as families and friends gathered around tables decorated with evergreen garlands and flickering candles. At the front, Ellie stood behind a modest podium, the snow globe resting beside her. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I want to share a story with you tonight. It's a story about love, kindness, and the connections that tie us together, even across generations." As she spoke, the room grew quiet. Ellie recounted the journey that had begun with a mysterious gift and led her to uncover a piece of her family's history. She spoke of Arthur and Margaret, of the snow globe's symbolism, and the legacy of love they had passed down. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. But more than that, Ellie saw tears in the eyes of many and smiles that reflected the hope her story had inspired. Nathan approached her after the event, his face lit with pride. "You did it," he said simply. Ellie smiled, holding the snow globe close. "I couldn't have done it without you. Or without them." Nathan nodded. "What's next for you, Ellie?" She glanced at the snow globe, the glitter inside catching the light like tiny stars. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think this is just the beginning." And deep down, Ellie felt certain that her journey, like the snow globe's swirling magic, was far from over. Ellie's story spread further than she could have imagined. After the community center event, word traveled through Burlington's tight-knit circles. Soon, local bookstores, libraries, and even a nearby university invited her to share the tale of her grandmother and Arthur. Her small booklet, titled The Snow Globe's Whisper, found a home in shop windows and library shelves, often accompanied by heartfelt messages from readers. People connected with the story, not just because of its mystery and romance, but because it reminded them of their own cherished memories and lost connections. But amidst the excitement, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that her journey wasn't over. The snow globe remained on her nightstand, a silent reminder of everything she had discovered, and everything still left unanswered. One afternoon, Ellie received an email from a name she didn't recognize. Henry Merritt. The subject line read, "I found something." With a mix of anticipation and nerves, Ellie opened the message. Ellie, after you left Maine, I went through some of Arthur's belongings I hadn't looked at in years. Among them was a small box labeled Margaret. Inside, I found letters, photos, and a journal he kept during the time he knew your grandmother. One entry stood out. Arthur wrote about a letter he had tried to send Margaret but never did. He mentioned leaving it somewhere he hoped she would find someday, a place they both cherished. I think he was referring to the wildflower field. I don't know if it's still there, but I wanted you to know in case it gives you another piece of their story. Ellie's heart raced. Another letter? She thought she had uncovered everything the field had to offer, but Arthur's journal suggested otherwise. Without hesitation, Ellie called Nathan. I'm going back to Maine, she told him. There might be more to find. I'll come with you, Nathan offered. Ellie hesitated for a moment but then nodded. I'd like that. The trip to Maine felt different this time. Less like a journey into the unknown and more like returning to a place where she belonged. Nathan's steady presence was a comfort, and as they drove, Ellie found herself sharing more about her life, her dreams, her fears, and the profound impact this journey had had on her. When they arrived at the wildflower field, the snow lay untouched, a perfect canvas of white. The grove of trees stood as Ellie remembered, their branches heavy with frost. Where do we even start? Nathan asked, glancing around. Ellie held the snow globe tightly, letting her instincts guide her. She walked toward the grove, her boots crunching in the snow. Something about the largest tree, the same one where she had found the tin box, drew her in again. She knelt by its base, brushing away the snow. Her fingers grazed the bark, searching for anything out of place. Then she felt it. A small hollow near the roots, partially hidden by a tangle of branches. Nathan crouched beside her as she reached inside. Her fingers closed around a bundle wrapped in waxed cloth. Carefully, she pulled it out and unwrapped it. Inside was a letter. The paper was fragile but intact, the handwriting unmistakably Arthur's. Ellie unfolded it with care, her breath hitching as she read, "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then somehow, fate has allowed my words to reach you. There are things I've kept in my heart for far too long, feelings I should have shared with you in the light of day. You were my compass, Margaret, guiding me toward a better version of myself. I hoped to give you this letter in person, but fear kept me silent. And so, I leave it here in the field where we spent our happiest moments. Know that my love for you was quiet but steadfast, and it lingers still, in the small, beautiful moments I carry with me. I hope you find this and feel the warmth of the memories we shared. Yours always, Arthur. Ellie's tears fell freely as she read, her voice trembling as she shared the words with Nathan. The letter was both a declaration and a farewell, a love preserved in the quiet corners of time, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. Nathan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You found it, he said softly, the heart of their story. Ellie nodded, clutching the letter to her chest. It wasn't just Arthur's love for Margaret she felt. It was the legacy of that love, passed down to her, urging her to cherish the connections in her own life. She looked at Nathan, a question forming on her lips. But before she could speak, he smiled. Come on, he said, helping her to her feet. Let's take this story home. And for the first time, Ellie felt ready to do just that. Back in Burlington, the weight of everything Ellie had uncovered felt less like a burden and more like a treasure. The snow globe sat in its usual spot on her nightstand, now a symbol of everything she had learned. About her grandmother, about Arthur, and about the enduring power of love. The letter she had found in the field was the final piece of the puzzle. It spoke not just of Arthur's love for Margaret, but of his hope that their story would inspire others. Ellie realized she had a responsibility to share that hope, not just with strangers but with the people in her life. Days turned into weeks, and Ellie worked tirelessly to expand her booklet, The Snow Globe's Whisper, into a full-length book. Nathan became her closest confidant during the process, offering guidance, encouragement, and an unwavering belief in her vision. As the book neared completion, Nathan invited Ellie to dinner at his favorite restaurant. It was a small, quiet place with fairy lights strung across the windows, the warm glow contrasting with the cold Vermont evening outside. You've come so far, Nathan said as they sat across from each other, his eyes warm with admiration. I don't think I've ever seen someone embrace a story so fully. Ellie smiled, though her cheeks flushed under his gaze. It's not just my story, she said softly. It belongs to my grandmother, to Arthur, to everyone who's ever loved deeply and quietly. But It's also ours, isn't it? Yours and mine. Nathan's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise giving way to something deeper. Ellie, he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. I've been drawn to this story because of its beauty, but I've stayed because of you. Ellie's heart skipped. She held his gaze, her thoughts swirling with everything they had shared. Before she could respond, Nathan reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. Arthur and Margaret may not have had their moment, Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper, but maybe we can have ours. As winter gave way to spring, Ellie's book was published, its cover adorned with an image of the snow globe. The launch event was held at a local bookstore, and Ellie was overwhelmed by the turnout. Friends, neighbors, and strangers alike filled the space, their excitement palpable. When it was her turn to speak, Ellie stepped up to the podium, her hands clutching the snow globe. This story began long before I was born, she said, her voice steady. It's a story of love and kindness, of the connections we often take for granted. But it's also a story of courage, the courage to hold onto what matters most and to share it with the world. As she spoke, Ellie's eyes met Nathan's in the crowd. His smile was quiet but sure, a promise of the life they were beginning to build together. That night, as Ellie returned home, she placed the snow globe back on her nightstand. She shook it gently, watching the glitter swirl and settle. For the first time, the world didn't feel so uncertain. She had found her place in the story, a story that would continue to ripple outward, touching lives she could never imagine. Ellie turned off the light and lay down, her heart full of gratitude. Outside, the stars glittered like the snow globe's tiny flecks, each one a reminder that even in the vastness of time, the smallest moments could hold infinite beauty. And somewhere, she knew, Arthur and Margaret's story was still being told. Through her, through Nathan, and through everyone who believed in the quiet magic of love.